The Truman Show, Ace Ventura, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind are just a few of Jim Carrey's classic roles. He has a legion of devoted followers because his enormous sense of humor has made people throughout the world chuckle. But beneath this vivacious and apparently joyful television character lies a guy who has endured numerous hardships and tragedies. This is the autobiographical account of Jim Carrey's various hardships, including his mental health fights, heartbreaks, and the peculiar difficulties that accompany stardom. The 17th of January 1962 was the birthdate of James Eugene Carrey in Newmarket, Canada. Kathleen, his mother, was a singer before she became a stay-at-home wife, and Percy, his father, played saxophone in a big band in Toronto before he became an accountant to provide for his family. His mother's family was of French, Irish, and Scottish descent, and his father's family was of French and Canadian descent. The true surname of their ancestors was Carrey. Along with his three older siblings Rita, Patricia, and John, Jim was raised in a Catholic household. When he was a kid, his parents struggled to make ends meet. His mother suffered from chronic health issues and spent most of her time in bed. Scarborough, Ontario was the family's home. James attended North York's Blessed Trinity Catholic Elementary School when he was a little boy. Because he was shy and lonely, his dyslexia made it hard for him to succeed academically. Jim had a lengthy history of taking medication for his depression, which he battled with frequently. He battled dyslexia by spending a lot of time alone in his room on memory techniques. Another thing that helped him become good at making impressions was the time he spent making silly expressions in front of the mirror. On top of that, he utilized humor as a coping mechanism at school, which some teachers found annoying. But young Jim had found that he could connect with people more effectively through humor. Even as a young man, Jim aspired to make it big in the comedy world. He was dead set on it. The producers of The Carol Burnett Show received his resume when he was just 10 years old. Receiving a typical return letter made him very thrilled. Monty Python, a British comedy series from the 1970s, was much beloved by Jim. Michael Palin's portrayal of the heartbroken Ernest Scrubler in the comedy The Funniest Joke in the World served as a constant source of inspiration for him. For 8 years, Jim and his family called Burlington, Ontario, home. He was a student at Aldershot High School back then. Afterwards, Jim went back to Scarborough and spent some time in a Jancourt Collegiate Institute before leaving on his 16th birthday. His father lost his work when he was a teenager, as well as the family's homelessness. Relocating from Newmarket to a Toronto suburb was necessary for them. They made their home in the driveway of Pat's house in their Volkswagen bus. Jim and his brother camped out in Charles Daly Park, Lincoln, Ontario, on the shore of Lake Ontario for months. My father lost his job. Jim made fun of us later on, and I was homeless for a while. I assumed we were just going camping because, well, I grew up in Canada. His dad's job at the Titan Wheels tire manufacturing helped alleviate their financial woes. Even though they lived in close proximity to the plant, Jim and his brothers were employed there in various security and cleaning capacities. Jim began performing stand-up comedy in 1977, while still a teenager, at a Toronto club. With the support of his dad, he attempted stand-up comedy for the first time at a Toronto club. The idea of a polyester suit was appealing to his mom, so she went ahead and chose him an outfit. He began to question his artistic destiny as his typical impressions bombed in the club's edgy environment. When things improved financially for his family, they were able to relocate to a new house after a while. After he had gotten his life in order, he overcame his fears and returned to the stage in 1979, this time with a stronger act, and made his paying debut at the Hayloft Club. Jim aspired to pursue sketch comedy with his growing popularity in Toronto as an impressionist. In the early 80s, he tried out for a Saturday Night Live role. Regrettably, Charles Rocket was instead selected by Jean Doumanian, the new producer. He provided his voice for the late-night CFMT show The All Night Show when he was passed over for Saturday Night Live. In February 1981, Jim, who was 19 years old, landed a gig as the opening act for a rock band called Gato at the Roxy Theatre in Barrie. He was still performing his comedic impersonation in Toronto and the surrounding areas. Sadly, the rock crowd booed him off the stage because they didn't enjoy his performance. But the Toronto Star published a review of his Yuck Yucks performance 2 weeks later, describing him as a promising young talent. His comedic talents were in high demand across Canada after this assessment. He had an appearance on the April 1981 episode of An Evening at the Improv, a television stand-up program. Introducing Janet, a TV movie he appeared in later that year, portrayed an impressionist comic who was having trouble making it. Jim made his acting debut in the film, which grossed over $1 million in Canada. Rumor has it that Jim tried to land a stand-up comedy gig on The Tonight Show in 1982 by performing for talent scouts Jim McCauley and Bud Robinson. He had already established himself financially as a comedian. He appeared in front of notable comedians such as Rodney Dangerfield and Buddy Hackett and wrote the majority of his jokes. On stage, Jim would often display his boundless energy and lightning-fast mind. From Humphrey Bogart to Kermit the Frog, he could imitate anyone with ease and play over 100 distinct roles. After hearing that he needed to hone his act, Jim went back to Toronto, where he had a large fan base. Jim returned to Toronto on June 19, 1982, after touring North America with Rodney Dangerfield, and performed 2 sold-out gigs at Massey Hall. He began performing at the Comedy Store after deciding to relocate to Hollywood in early 1983. In the spring of 1983, he appeared to have accomplished his lifelong dream of appearing on The Tonight Show. Things were altered, unfortunately, because to a less than stellar performance at the Improv. He may have faltered in Hollywood, but his popularity in Toronto knew no bounds. He did a 3-night run at Toronto's BB Bagoons in late April 1983. During this time, Jim was featured in a national Canadian television program on CTV's W5. Jim Ronstadt began dating Linda Ronstadt around this period. Linda used to be a well-known vocalist. From 1965 until 1968, she performed with the band The Stone Ponies. She worked with Frank Zappa and Paul Simon, among others, and released 28 studio recordings. Jim and Linda first crossed paths when Linda watched him act at a Los Angeles Comedy Store not long after he had relocated to Hollywood. Unexpectedly, he was still residing with his parents at that time, so Linda invited Jim to open for her on tour, but he turned her down and instead asked her out on a date. After their 8 months together, Jim spoke highly of Linda. An extraordinary human being she was. He was 15 years younger than Linda when this happened. Prior to the 1985-86 season, Jim made another attempt to get into Saturday Night Live. He was turned down by Lorne Michaels without ever presenting him with any of his work, despite his successful film career and stand-up comedy. After releasing in mid-November 1985, Jim's film Once Bitten had a respectable run at the box office, despite this setback. In the autumn of 1986, Jim made a third effort to become a cast member of Saturday Night Live. He was turned down again, despite having the opportunity to perform for Lorne Michaels and the rest of the cast. Instead, other comedians such as Phil Hartman and Dana Carvey were recruited. Jim wed Melissa Woomer, a former not-so-famous actress, the following year. She was on The Yesterday Show with John Kirwan and had parts in films like Real Stories of the Donut Men and Man on the Moon. They crossed paths when Jim was a beleaguered stand-up comic. He performed at a Comedy Store, and she was a server there. The couple quickly welcomed a daughter, Jane Erin Jim. Once things with his family were out of the way, Jim realized he needed to work on his acting abilities if he ever wanted to advance in his job beyond making impressions. Because of this, Jim wanted to start a new comedy show. He shifted his performances to focus more on observational and character comedy rather than impersonating celebrities. Regardless, it meant letting down the club owners and playing to dissatisfied crowds. Jim continued to pursue a career in acting even as he worked on honing his comedic skills. From 1990 through 1994, he was a regular on the television show In Living Color. As a result, he got his first major film part, which catapulted his career. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, Jim's 1994 film, opened to $72 million in North America and was a box office smash. Massive film deals for sequels and other projects came his way. Worldwide earnings for the July 1994 release of The Mask were $351 million. Another smash blockbuster, Dumb and Dumber, made nearly $270 million globally upon its release in December 1994. In addition to ranking second on the top 10 money-making stars poll, Jim received a Golden Globe nomination for The Mask. Jim had to overcome a great deal of personal grief while he was achieving fame in Hollywood. Both of his parents passed away within a few years of one another, his mother in 1991 and his father in 1994. A moving anecdote about Jim's dad was shared by Jim. His father, he said, had the makings of a legendary comic but had instead settled for a secure career as an accountant due to his lack of confidence in his comedic abilities. Drawing on his father's story, Jim stressed the significance of following one's passion even when it may be risky. According to Jim, his father's failure served as the catalyst for his comedic career. Jim kept his strength and focused on his job even after his parents passed away. His 1995 Batman Forever role was that of the Riddler. In the same year, he made a triumphant return as Ace Ventura in Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. The films made a tidy sum at the box office. On the other hand, Jim was also beset by tragedy that year when he and Melissa were divorcing. They were wed since 1987, but things were tough for them as Jim's fame grew. Jim was described as having a complex personality exhibiting both caring and detached tendencies, according to the reports. Jim and Melissa's marriage ended because of his affair with Lauren Holly, an actress he met on set of Dumb and Dumber. They reached a divorce settlement after a protracted legal fight, which included a $3 million payout for Melissa and a child support arrangement of $25,000. After Jim's first marriage ended in divorce, he wed Lauren Holly a year later. On September 23, 1996, they exchanged wedding vows on a mountain. While it was clear that Jim had betrayed his wife and that Lauren had fallen in love with him on set, Lauren still insisted she had no role in separating Jim's family. Though Lauren's career took a hit while she was married to the famous actor, the union was short-lived, only 9 months. Despite the fact that she was legally entitled to half of Jim's income throughout their marriage, including the $20 million he earned from his role in the critically panned picture Liar and the Cable Guy, she was left with nothing. However, he received another Golden Globe Award nomination for Best Actor for his performance in the comedic film Liar. Jim opted for a reduced salary in 1998 to star in The Truman Show. The Best Actor Golden Globe went to him. Reviewers gave Jim high marks for the picture, praising how it showcased his acting chops in a new light. In a later episode of that year's Larry Sanders Show, he made a cameo appearance, mocking Gary Shandling's character with humor. He won yet another Golden Globe for his 1999 role as Andy Kaufman, the stand-up comedian, in Man on the Moon, Me, Myself, and Irene 2000, in which Jim played a state trooper with several identities, was the second film in which he collaborated with the Farrelly brothers. At the box office, the picture was a success. In the same year, he received a Golden Globe nomination for his performance as the Grinch in the holiday classic How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Speculation circulated that Jim began an affair with fellow actress January Jones following his second divorce. She began her Hollywood career with supporting parts in films such as Full Frontal, Taboo, and Bandits. Since Jim had become a somewhat successful actor, their connection benefited her career. Jim co-starred in Bruce Almighty with Jennifer Aniston and Morgan Freeman a year after they began dating. Worldwide, the picture was a huge financial success. As a result, Jones's rise to prominence in films like Anger Management and, by 2007, Mad Men was hardly unexpected. Her relationship with Jim ended quickly, even though she received a promotion at work. Jim began a committed relationship with Renee Zellweger, an actress, while filming Myself, and Irene. The two went on a brief engagement after dating for a while. But they were only together for 18 months. Renee reportedly threatened to leave him as his girlfriend unless he proposed within a year, which led to their engagement, as reported by the National Enquirer. Renee was impacted by Jim's mood swings, according to a source. Renee was also rumored to be somewhat impulsive. Jim wasn't prepared to have any more children, despite Renee's desire to have a family. He already had a teenage daughter. Their partnership swiftly came to an end due to all these problems. Even when his last relationship bombed, Jim remained career-focused. He was granted dual U.S. and Canadian citizenship in 2004. In the same year, Jim appeared in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Many critics gave the film high marks. According to critics, Jim gave his finest performance to date. He was nominated for 2 major awards, the Golden Globe and his first BAFTA. Following that, he had a role in a series of unfortunate events written and directed by Lemony Snicket. He also became a member of the Canadian Walk of Fame that year. Jim's subsequent relationship in 2005 was with Jenny McCarthy, who was well known. The Bad Girls Guide, Scary Movie 3, and What I Like About You were among of her most famous films from that era. After 5 years of being a much-loved Hollywood couple, they shocked everyone in 2010 by breaking up abruptly. While on Howard Stern's radio show in 2012, Jenny openly blasted Jim for allegedly abandoning their autistic kid after they separated, claiming that he had been a major influence in the boy's life before. But in 2014, she stood up for Jim when Shia LaBeouf criticized his parenting skills. The bond between her and Jim had obviously grown stronger. As he maintains his successful career in film, Jim shows no signs of slowing down. In addition to his 2014 Dumb and Dumber sequel, he has appeared in films such as Philip Morris, A Christmas Carol, Mr. Popper's Penguins, and I Love You. Catriona White was Jim's subsequent romantic partner. She was an Irish cosmetics artist who styled and worked with celebrities like Lindy Greenwood and David Hasselhoff. In 2012, Jim started dating Catriona, split up in 2013 before reconciling in May 2015. She suffered from depression and had expressed thoughts of self-harm in the past. Tragically, she took her own life in 2015, shortly after they broke up. She had previously boasted to her friends about how much she loved Jim and how their relationship was unpredictable. Because of how much she relied on him, she was afraid he was abandoning her. Jim helped carry her casket during her funeral in Ireland, even though they weren't dating when she passed away. Bridget Sweetman, Catriona's mother, and Mark Burton, her ex-husband, attempted to sue him for her murder, almost forcing him to appear to court. Her mother stated that her daughter's suicide was a direct result of Jim's abandonment. James felt he needed to demonstrate that her suicide was not his responsibility. A 2011 document that purportedly demonstrated her health prior to meeting him was found to be fraudulent by his legal team. This finally put Jim's reputation in the clear. Regardless, Jim was accused by certain news sites of abusing his ex-girlfriend, encouraging her to use drugs, and mistreating her. Jim was seen by paparazzi exiting a California restaurant in 2016 with another woman. After that, Jim faded from sight and didn't get many acting jobs, with the exception of a couple that year. His most recent notable role was that of Jeff in the TV series Kidding. Good day, Mr. Pickles. His previous relationship apparently had a profound effect on him. Rumor has it that he has never been the same. Back in 2020, he penned a book titled Memoirs and Misinformation. Afterwards, he made an attempt to portray Joe Biden on SNL, but many felt his comedic timing didn't mesh with the genuine Biden's reserved demeanor. For that reason, in December of 2020, Jim will no longer play Biden on the show. In the 2020 Sonic film, he portrayed the antagonist. Some even went so far as to call it his best performance in quite some time. After his successful debut, they rehired him for 2022's Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Jim had his biggest opening weekend ever because of the film's massive box office success in the United States. The Weeknd's 2022 album Dawn FM had him as the narrator as well. Jim mentioned that he might retire from acting in April 2022 if he felt that he had accomplished enough. He did said that he might return for a certain screenplay that he thinks the public should see. I may return to this path later on if the angels deliver me a golden script that says it will be crucial for people to see, but for now I'm just going to regroup. But ever since he withdrew from Hollywood in 2022 to concentrate on art, his pals have been concerned about his whereabouts. His friends and family say he hasn't been himself recently and isn't as outgoing as he once was. Fans noticed a change in Jim's appearance on his 62nd birthday, and many feel he has gone through a lot, both emotionally and physically. Thankfully, rumor has it that Jim accepted a fantastic screenplay in February 2024, and he will be returning to reprise his role as Dr. Robotnik in the third Sonic film. Inspiring as it may seem, Jim overcame a troubled youth to achieve superstardom. We watch a young man cling to his ambition, not for his own benefit but in honor of his father, who sacrificed his comedic career for the benefit of his family. The strength to persevere through difficult times is demonstrated by Jim's life. There is no denying Jim's indelible mark on the entertainment industry, no matter how difficult his journey has been. As Jim makes a triumphant return to the limelight, all we can do is wait for his incredible narrative to continue.